For weeks, the homeowner had felt something was off. The online orders that once arrived with clockwork precision suddenly began to vanish into thin air. At first it seemed like a mistake. A lost package here, a delayed shipment there. Carriers sometimes got overwhelmed and mix-ups happened. But soon, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Boxes marked "delivered" never showed up at the door. Tracking updates confirmed drop-offs that mysteriously evaporated into nothingness. At first, frustration gnawed at the edges of patience. It wasn't just the inconvenience of missing packages, it was the strange emptiness that accompanied each notification. The sound of a truck engine rumbling down the street no longer brought the little spark of excitement it once did. Instead, it bred suspicion. Somewhere, between the driver leaving the package and the homeowner arriving at the door, the parcels were vanishing. The neighborhood itself gave clues. A tight-knit block of houses, arranged neatly under the governing rules of an HOA, should have been safe. Surveillance cameras dotted porches, neighbors waved as they tended lawns, and block parties filled the cul-de-sacs every summer. Yet safety was only an illusion. Behind carefully manicured hedges and polished smiles, something darker lingered. Someone was watching, someone was waiting, and someone was taking what wasn't theirs. It didn't take long for whispers to spread. Others in the community had lost deliveries too. A missing set of dog toys, a brand new blender that never arrived. Even a box of winter coats intended for donation vanished before reaching its rightful owner. The common thread ran clear. Packages were being stolen, and it wasn't random. Suspicion narrowed in on one house. A corner lot with a sprawling lawn, trimmed within an inch of perfection, and hedges that looked sculpted rather than grown. Behind those hedges lived the one neighbor everyone knew by reputation alone, Karen. She wasn't the kind of neighbor who joined block parties or waved while mowing the lawn. She was the one who monitored others' grass heights with a ruler, left passive-aggressive notes about trash bins, and called the HOA over the smallest infractions. Karen thrived on control. She relished in bending the rules to suit her whims, while making sure everyone else stayed in line. If a car lingered in the cul-de-sac for too long, she had something to say. If holiday decorations were deemed too excessive, she would report it. Over time, she had carved out a reign of irritation, a presence so suffocating that neighbors avoided confrontation altogether. But this time, the stakes were higher than HOA letters and clipped hedges. Evidence began stacking. A neighbor recalled seeing Karen by the curb when a package was left at one house. Another mentioned spotting her walking briskly toward her garage with something tucked under her arm. Though circumstantial, the puzzle pieces fit together with uncomfortable precision. Packages were disappearing, and the woman with the sharpest eyes and the nosiest tendencies seemed to be the common denominator. The homeowner began watching closely. From the window, every delivery was timed, every motion across the street noted. And then came the moment that cemented the theory. One crisp afternoon, a small brown box appeared on the porch. It was nothing expensive, just a household necessity ordered online. The notification chimed, confirming its delivery. But when the door opened mere minutes later, the package was gone. Across the street, Karen's blinds twitched. A faint flicker of movement betrayed her presence. The homeowner stood frozen, realization burning like fire in their chest. It was no longer a suspicion. It was certainty. Karen was the thief. What made it worse, wasn't just the theft itself, but the audacity. Karen had always held herself as the unofficial enforcer of the neighborhood, the one who demanded compliance from others. Yet here she was, crossing the line of basic decency, plucking packages from porches like fruit from trees. She wasn't just breaking trust, she was shattering it in the most hypocritical way possible. The anger built slowly, tempered by calculation. Calling the authorities felt futile without undeniable proof. Reporting her to the HOA was laughable. After all, Karen practically had them wrapped around her finger. The only way forward was patience, observation, and a plan. That night, as the house settled into silence, the homeowner sat awake, sketching out ideas. There had to be a way to catch her red-handed. Cameras were one option, but Karen was crafty. If she spotted even the hint of surveillance, she'd vanish like smoke. No, the answer had to be smarter, more subtle, and above all, unforgettable. The missing packages weren't just losses anymore. They were motivation. Each vanished box was fuel for the trap that would soon be set. The game had shifted, and it was no longer about waiting for deliveries. It was about delivering something Karen would never forget. The plan began to form, piece by piece, a mixture of creativity and revenge. It would require patience, careful timing, and a delivery of an entirely different kind. But the thought of Karen's reaction, the image of her smug expression crumbling, gave the homeowner all the resolve needed. For now, the street remained quiet. Karen's lights flickered off as the night deepened, her blinds pulled tight against the world outside. But little did she know, her days of stealing were numbered, and soon the tables would turn. Because if Karen wanted packages so badly, she was about to get one. Only this time, it wouldn't be the kind of delivery she expected. The days following the realization were marked by a restless energy that buzzed like static in the air. Very creak of the porch boards, every rumble of a delivery truck, every subtle shift of movement across the street fed into a singular focus, the trap. Revenge in this case wasn't about cruelty. It was about justice. Sweet, undeniable, and memorable. To strike back at Karen in a way she would never forget, the homeowner needed something both irresistible and humiliating. It had to look authentic, appear valuable, and lure her in without hesitation. The plan began with an empty box. Not just any box, but one of the exact same kind the carriers typically used. Smooth, brown cardboard with bold shipping labels carefully replicated to pass a casual glance. The homeowner saved every authentic package that still managed to arrive safely, studying the stickers and fonts until the fake became indistinguishable from the real. When it sat on the porch, no one, not even Karen, would suspect a thing. But the box itself was only the shell. What mattered most was what lay inside. This wasn't about replacing stolen items. It was about delivering a message. After careful deliberation, the homeowner chose something Karen would never anticipate, a concoction designed for maximum shock value. Glitter, for instance, the bane of neat freaks everywhere. A fine, shimmering powder that clung to every surface, impossible to sweep away completely. And not just a pinch, pounds of it, waiting to burst forth in a spectacular cloud the second the box was opened. The mechanism was simple but effective. A spring-loaded flap tucked inside the cardboard walls, carefully rigged to release when the flaps were lifted. With one motion, the contents would erupt outward, showering the opener in a cascade of sparkling chaos. It wasn't harmful, but it was humiliating. And better yet, it would linger. For weeks, Karen would be finding traces of glitter on her clothes, her carpet, her pristine hedges. But glitter, alone, wasn't enough. The homeowner wanted Karen to feel the weight of her own actions. So tucked beneath the glitter trap, hidden in plain sight, was a note. Just a single sheet of paper, folded neatly, with a message scrawled in bold letters. "Stealing isn't neighborly. Consider this your last free delivery." The homeowner couldn't help but imagine the scene. Karen, smug and triumphant, carrying the box into her house with the same entitlement she displayed when lecturing others about their recycling bins. The way her face would twist from satisfaction to horror in a single sparkling second was almost too perfect to picture. Yet the trap required patience. Timing was crucial. If Karen sensed anything unusual, the entire plan would crumble. So the homeowner waited for the perfect opportunity, a day when a legitimate delivery arrived alongside the decoy. The genuine package would serve as camouflage, normalizing the sight of multiple boxes stacked neatly on the porch. At last, the moment arrived. The notification chimed, signaling the drop-off of a small order. As soon as the truck pulled away, the homeowner placed the decoy next to the real one, aligning them just so. To anyone watching, it looked like another ordinary delivery day. But in truth, the stage was set. From behind the curtains, the homeowner watched. Across the street, the faint twitch of blinds betrayed Karen's vigilance. She was always watching, always waiting for her moment. The minutes dragged like hours, the air thick with anticipation. And then, there she was. The familiar figure emerged from her fortress of hedges, clad in her usual attire of superiority, pressed clothes, sunglasses that glinted even in shade, and that purposeful stride that carried an air of authority. She glanced down the street, ensuring no one was outside, then moved quickly toward the porch. The homeowner's heart raced. Every step Karen took was another drumbeat, every glance another tick of suspense. She approached the boxes, her eyes darting, ejaculating. Without hesitation, she bent down, scooped up the decoy, and tucked it under her arm as if it already belonged to her. Just like that, she turned and walked briskly back across the street, the stolen prize clutched close. The blinds quivered again as she disappeared into her house, the door shutting firmly behind her. The homeowner exhaled, equal parts relief and exhilaration. The trap had been sprung. Karen had taken the bait, and now the glitter bomb waited silently for its grand debut. But the story didn't end with the box disappearing behind Karen's door. If anything, that was only the beginning. Because the homeowner knew something Karen didn't. Every move, every theft, every triumphant little smirk of hers was about to backfire in spectacular fashion. And when the eruption came, when the glitter rained down upon her carefully curated world, there would be no denying the truth. Karen had stolen her last package, and this time, the delivery came with consequences. What Karen didn't realize, however, was that this glitter explosion was only one part of the plan. The homeowner wasn't content with a single prank. No, this was just the opening act. Because once a thief was exposed, the real work of accountability could begin. For now, though, the trap sat quietly inside Karen's pristine home, waiting for the moment she would lift the flaps. And when that moment came, it would be nothing short of unforgettable. Inside Karen's immaculate home, the decoy box sat innocently on the kitchen counter. It blended seamlessly with the other items she had likely swiped over the weeks, small trophies of entitlement, stacked without guilt. To Karen, this was just another successful grab, another prize taken without consequence. She couldn't have known that this time her arrogance had delivered her downfall straight to her doorstep. For hours, the box waited. Its cardboard shell concealed the carefully engineered surprise within, silent yet brimming with potential energy. The glitter lay, packed tightly against its spring-loaded mechanism, shimmering faintly in the dim light, ready to erupt with a force disproportionate to its size. Meanwhile, across the street, the homeowner remained vigilant. The blinds were cracked open just enough to keep a watchful eye, anticipation surging like a current. Every minute felt stretched thin, a fragile string waiting to snap. The house remained quiet at first, its windows shuttered, its blinds still. But soon, faint signs of movement flickered inside. Shadows passed across the curtains, lights clicked on. Karen was home, and she was settling in. Then it happened. The faintest glimpse of her silhouette moved into the kitchen. A chair scraped, a cupboard closed, and finally, her hand reached toward the decoy box. The flaps opened. The explosion was instant. A spectacular burst of glitter erupted from the box, cascading through the air like a shimmering storm. The fine powder clung to everything it touched: Karen's clothes, her hair, her countertops, the pristine tiled floor she so proudly polished. The air glittered with flecks of pink, gold, and silver, swirling in chaotic patterns as they rained down upon her. From the window, The homeowner couldn't hear her exact reaction, but the frantic gestures told the story clearly enough. Karen stumbled backward, waving her hands as if she could swat away the glitter cloud. She tried brushing herself off, only to make it worse, smearing sparkling streaks across her blouse and cheeks. Every motion seemed to multiply the chaos, the powder embedding deeper into her carefully curated world. Her blinds fluttered as she rushed toward the windows, perhaps to check if anyone had witnessed her humiliation. But the damage was already done. No amount of tugging at her curtains could erase the sparkling evidence now coating her body and home. Even from across the street, the homeowner could. To see the faint glimmer clinging to Karen's hair, catching the afternoon sunlight in a way that made her look less like an authority figure and more like the unwilling star of a glitter parade. Inside, the mess spread quickly. The moment she tried to sweep the counters, the glitter resisted, scattering into new corners. When she attempted to shake it from her clothes, it fell to the floor, embedding in the carpet fibers. Glitter, once unleashed, was impossible to contain. It was the gift that never stopped giving, a reminder of her theft that would linger long after the initial chaos subsided. And then, the note appeared. Amid the shimmering chaos, Karen discovered the folded sheet at the bottom of the box. She picked it up, fingers trembling, eyes scanning the bold message. "Stealing isn't neighborly. Consider this your last free delivery." The homeowner imagined the moment vividly, the way her face must have twisted, not just from the shock of the glitter, but from the knowledge that someone knew. Someone had seen her. Someone had exposed her secret. The fortress of control she had built within the neighborhood had cracked, and through that fracture poured humiliation. Across the street, the homeowner savored the sight of her pacing, clutching the note in one hand while attempting to brush glitter from her clothes with the other. Her composure, once unshakable, now seemed fragile and frantic. For the first time, Karen looked less like the enforcer of neighborhood rules and more like a guilty thief caught in the act. The beauty of the plan lay not in its cruelty but in its symbolism. The glitter wasn't just a prank, it was a mirror, reflecting Karen's hypocrisy for all to see. The woman who once prided herself on order now found her home invaded by chaos. The one who demanded spotless lawns and spotless behavior was now coated in a mess she could never fully erase. And yet the homeowner knew this was just the beginning. The glitter explosion had made its point, but Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. If anything, her pride would push her toward retaliation. She would stew in her humiliation, plotting her next move, convinced she could still regain control of the narrative. For now, though, the victory was sweet. The street remained quiet, the evening sun casting long shadows across the cul-de-sac, and the faint twinkle of glitter lingered on Karen's windowsill like a badge of poetic justice. But the battle was far from over, because glitter could only deliver the first blow. The real challenge lay ahead, ensuring that Karen never stole again, and that the entire neighborhood finally saw her for what she truly was. The trap had been sprung, the explosion had landed, and the message had been delivered. Now came the aftermath, the ripples spreading outward, threatening to shake the very foundation of Karen's carefully curated kingdom. The glitter explosion should have been the end of it. A lesson delivered, a line drawn in the sand. But Karen was not the kind of woman to accept humiliation quietly. If anything, the sparkling disaster inside her house only hardened her resolve. To her, it wasn't just a prank. It was a declaration of war. For the next few days, the neighborhood felt different. The usual rhythm of deliveries and porch pickups carried on, but a tension hovered in the air. Karen, normally so visible, retreated into her home. The blinds stayed closed, the driveway empty, the hedges uncharacteristically unattended. It was as though she was regrouping, licking her wounds while plotting her next move. The homeowner remained cautious, watching from behind their own curtains. At first, there was satisfaction in knowing Karen was still battling the glitter. A faint sparkle would catch in the sunlight when she briefly stepped outside, clinging stubbornly to her clothes or hair. It was proof that the trap had worked exactly as intended. But beneath the satisfaction lingered unease. Karen wasn't defeated. She was stewing. The retaliation began subtly. First came the anonymous complaint to the HOA. A letter appeared in the homeowner's mailbox, citing supposed violations. A recycling bin left out too long, grass that was half an inch too tall, holiday lights that allegedly broke code. All trivial infractions, all exaggerated. It had Karen's fingerprints all over it. She couldn't confront her glitter-covered humiliation directly, so she reverted to the weapon she knew best, bureaucracy. But that was only the opening strike. Soon after, strange things began happening around the house. Trash cans tipped over during the night, spilling contents across the lawn. A trail of dog feces appeared suspiciously close to the front walkway, though no one in the household owned a pet. Even the mailbox showed signs of tampering, its hinge bent as though forced. Each incident was small on its own, easily brushed off, but together they painted a picture of petty sabotage. Karen was retaliating, and she wanted her neighbor to know it. The homeowner, however, refused to bend. Each act of pettiness only solidified their resolve. If Karen wanted to escalate, she would meet resistance. Quietly, the homeowner began preparing once again, checking porch cameras more frequently, documenting every suspicious occurrence, keeping records of dates and times. This wasn't just about packages anymore. It was about defending one's home from a neighbor who had crossed the line. Meanwhile, whispers began to ripple through the neighborhood. Other residents had noticed Karen's strange behavior, her frantic trips to the garbage bins, her increased phone calls to the HOA, her tendency to peek out from behind her blinds more often than usual. The glitter explosion had not only stained her house, but her reputation as well. Though few dared to confront her directly, people were beginning to suspect that the Queen of Order wasn't quite as untouchable as she once seemed. Karen, sensing her grip slipping, doubled down. Late one evening, just as the homeowner was preparing for bed, headlights flared across the cul-de-sac. Karen's car pulled into her driveway, and she stepped out with a large black trash bag slung over her shoulder. Instead of heading for her own bins, she crept across the street, crouching low as though invisible, and dumped the bag directly onto her neighbor's lawn. The sound of glass clinking and garbage spilling echoed in the still night. Then she scurried back into her house, satisfied with her latest act of sabotage. But what Karen hadn't realized was that her every move had been caught on camera. A discreetly placed security lens, previously unnoticed, recorded the entire incident. For the homeowner, it was no longer about waiting for her to slip up. It was about collecting undeniable proof. Across the street, Karen likely believed she had regained control, that her petty revenge was chipping away at her neighbor's resolve. She didn't yet realize that with every act of sabotage, she was building a case against herself. The homeowner sat back, reviewing the footage, a calm determination replacing the initial anger. This was no longer just about missing packages or glitter bombs. It was about justice. And if Karen wanted a war, she had just guaranteed she would lose it. The cul-de-sac remained eerily quiet that night, the spilled trash rustling in the cool breeze, the glitter still faintly twinkling in Karen's curtains. The stage was set once again, but this time the stakes were higher. Because when the truth came out, Karen wouldn't just face humiliation. She'd face consequences far greater than she could control. The glitter explosion had rattled Karen, and her retaliation only confirmed the depths of her pettiness. But as the homeowner sifted through the mounting evidence, the footage of her dumping trash, the HOA complaints, the suspicious disturbances, an idea began to crystallize. It wasn't enough to simply outprank Karen. She had to be exposed, stripped of the power she had wielded over the neighborhood for years. For too long, Karen had thrived in the shadows of plausible deniability. She made anonymous calls to the HOA, left unsigned notes on neighbors' doors, and hid her true nature behind blinds and hedges. But now the homeowner had something she couldn't argue with: hard proof. The footage of her sneaking across the street with a bag of garbage, caught in the glow of her own car's headlights, was undeniable. There was no mistaking her figure, her stride, or the audacity of her actions. Side by side with reports of the stolen packages and the sabotage, it created a narrative too strong to ignore. The homeowner didn't rush. Timing was everything. They compiled the footage, documented the dates of each suspicious act, and even gathered statements from other neighbors whose deliveries had mysteriously vanished. Each piece of evidence was carefully arranged, forming a clear picture of Karen's behavior. This wasn't just a petty feud anymore. It was a pattern of harassment, theft, and hypocrisy. Then came the HOA meeting. The monthly gathering usually drew a modest crowd of residents, many of whom showed up reluctantly, ready to sit through discussions of lawn care and parking disputes. But this meeting would be different. The homeowner arrived prepared, a flash drive tucked safely into their pocket, and a calm determination in their expression. When the floor opened for community concerns, the homeowner rose and presented their case. Without drama, without exaggeration, they laid out the facts: packages disappearing, trash bags mysteriously dumped, false complaints submitted, and finally, the footage. The video played on the small projector screen, grainy but clear enough. There was Karen, creeping across the cul-de-sac under the cover of night, haulin' a garbage bag like a thief in the shadows. The room fell silent as she dumped it unceremoniously onto her neighbor's lawn, the act illuminated by her own headlights. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen, seated toward the front, froze. Her face flushed crimson, her lips pressed into a thin line as whispers began to spread around her. For years, she had cultivated an image of superiority, portraying herself as the neighborhood's enforcer of rules. But here, in front of everyone, that image shattered in an instant. The HOA board members exchanged uneasy glances. They had always entertained Karen's complaints, often bending rules to appease her relentless persistence. But now they saw her for what she truly was, the very problem she claimed to fight against. Karen attempted to speak, her voice sharp and defensive, but every protest only dug her deeper. The footage was undeniable. The note inside the glitter bomb, the timeline of missing packages, the testimonies of other residents, they all stacked against her. The more she tried to explain, the clearer her guilt became. By the end of the meeting, the HOA had no choice but to act. A formal warning was issued, with the threat of fines and potential legal action if her behavior continued. Neighbors who had once endured her silent tyranny now looked at her with contempt, their patience finally broken. The queen of the cul-de-sac had fallen from her throne. The homeowner didn't gloat. There was no need. The satisfaction came not from her humiliation, but from the justice that had finally been served. Karen had been exposed, her reputation dismantled in front of the very community she had sought to control. But even as the meeting adjourned and the crowd dispersed, one truth remained. Karen wasn't the type to surrender gracefully. Though cornered, she still had her pride, and pride could make a person dangerous. The homeowner walked home that evening with a cautious sense of victory. The evidence had spoken. The neighborhood had seen the tea. Ruth and the balance of power had shifted. Yet, in the shadows of Karen's shuttered windows, something lingered, a bitterness, a fury, a refusal to let go. Because if Karen had proven anything, it was that she thrived on conflict. And though her empire had crumbled, she wasn't finished yet. The HOA meeting had changed everything. Karen's reputation, once untouchable, now carried the stain of shame. Neighbors who once avoided her now whispered about her behind their fences, recalling every petty note, every overzealous complaint, every sideways glare. She had been exposed, and the glitter still clinging faintly to her home felt like a fitting emblem of her disgrace. But Karen wasn't ready to let go. Her pride, bruised and bleeding, demanded retaliation. Though her power within the HOA was gone, her stubbornness pushed her into reckless territory. She wanted revenge, not just against the homeowner who had exposed her, but against the entire neighborhood that had turned its back on her. Her attempts began small, petty acts meant to intimidate. The screech of tires outside the homeowner's house late at night, trash bags tossed on lawns, anonymous notes slipped under doors, scribbled in the same handwriting that had haunted residents for years. But now, no one believed her innocent facade. Every action was traced back to her, every whisper pointed in her direction. The homeowner, however, didn't flinch. By now, Karen's patterns were predictable. Cameras caught her movements. Neighbors watched with keen eyes, ready to call out her behavior. What once was a solitary battle had become a united front. For the first time, the neighborhood stood together, not in fear of Karen, but against her. Then came the breaking point. One evening, under the veil of night, Karen attempted her boldest sabotage yet. Armed with spray paint and a twisted sense of vengeance, she crept toward the HOA owner's driveway, ready to leave her mark. But what she didn't know was that she was no longer operating in shadows. The cameras were rolling. Neighbors were awake, and her every step was being tracked. As the hiss of the spray can filled the air, a porch light flicked on across the street. Then another. Curtains shifted, doors opened. One by one, neighbors emerged, their presence undeniable. Karen froze, the can still in her hand, caught like a criminal in a spotlight. The homeowner didn't need to say a word. The scene spoke for itself. Cameras captured everything, the spray paint, the trespassing, the look of fury etched across her face. She had gone too far, and this time there was no escaping the consequences. The police were called, and for once, Karen's influence meant nothing. The evidence was overwhelming. Vandalism, harassment, theft. It all stacked against her like bricks in a collapsing wall. She was issued citations, fines, and the looming threat of criminal charges. The HOA, desperate to save face, distanced itself completely, revoking her privileges and placing her under watch. Her downfall was complete. The house that once served as her fortress of power became her cage. Neighbors no longer tolerated her antics. Children whispered about the mean lady across the street, and adults spoke openly about her disgrace. The hedges she once pruned so meticulously grew wild, her lawn unkempt, her blinds permanently drawn. For the homeowner, justice had finally arrived. The packages that once disappeared began arriving safely again. Neighbors exchanged knowing smiles, their block lighter without the shadow of Karen's tyranny. The glitter trap, once just a desperate act of retaliation, had snowballed into the collapse of an empire. Looking back, the irony was almost poetic. Karen had stolen packages for the thrill, for the sense of control, for the belief that she was untouchable. But in the end, it was a package that undid her, a box filled not with valuables, but with justice disguised as glitter, the homeowner no longer felt the need to watch the blinds, no longer carried the weight of suspicion with each delivery truck's arrival. The cul-de-sac had returned to peace, its harmony restored not by rules or HOA regulations, but by standing up against the one who tried to control it. And Karen? She became a cautionary tale. Her name, once spoken with irritation, was now uttered with disbelief, a reminder of how arrogance and entitlement could lead to downfall. The neighborhood moved on, stronger and more united, while she remained trapped in the mess she had created, still finding flecks of glitter on her clothes, months after her grand humiliation. Because glitter, like consequences, was impossible to completely erase,